to episode 8 of Built FM. We're still in season 1. Season 1's been going for a number of years, so I think I'm kind of doing something wrong at this point. But I say that, we've got an amazing guest for episode 8. So we've got Mac Martine, and again, that's hopefully said right. Mac's got a really interesting story. I'm not going to talk about his story, it's his story, but it caught my eye, and it kind of embodies everything I see in the builder community, and it's one of these stories that gives people hope. So, hey Mac, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I am awesome. It's Friday, it's hot, I've got a fresh coffee, life is good. I'm now a human, apparently, instant human on my mug.
Yes, your mug says instant human. I like it.
Lies everywhere. So where in the world are you based, Mac?
Today I woke up in Porto, Portugal. We got here yesterday. So yes, that's where I am. We are, my wife and two boys and I have been traveling around Europe. We are from the US. This is the long answer to your question, but we're from the US. We've been kind of nomading around for a year. We spent the year in Croatia, and then the boys got out of school and we had been cruising around. We went to Serbia and Croatia, and now cruising around Portugal, and Spain is next.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm excited to explore today. I didn't get to see too much yesterday, so it's
So you're living the dream. That's cool.
I'm just gonna run with that because it appears that way on the outside, and yes, there's not a lot I can complain about, but I still have some problems I'm trying to figure out how to solve. So when I get them all solved, I'll let you know, and we'll do this again, and I'll talk about all the dream I'm living. But yes, no, it's hard to complain. We're having a great time and seeing the world.
That's awesome. Well, I'm English, so it means I can extract the complaints out of you and then amplify them and really apply some polish. So I've got some skills in that field. So if you ever want some help with that, let me know.
There you go.
So I am, again, I read your story, and I know I'm kind of robbing this from Indie Hackers, so, apologies to that team. I'm not trying to do anything weird, but I read your story twice, and I thought, oh man, I just need to say hello to this person. This is great. And it was your motivators that got me. It was the sheer grit and willpower. And I don't know if that's how it was in real life, but I figured there's got to be some kind of a story here that's worth saying hello to and, kind of breaking my neck over. So before we get into the story of recent events, what's your kind of, I guess, where did you start off in life? And do you do the thing today that you started off as?
Ooh, starting off in life. I mean, that goes pretty far back. I do look back. I think I had an idea of sort of always wanting to start a business of my own from a very young age. And actually my parents to this day, every couple of years, they send me this picture of when I was like 10 or something on my bike with these baskets on the back. And I was in the summer, we would go to this small town, and I got a job delivering papers at, again, like 10 or 11, some young age. And I would have a bike route, and I would go and toss the papers in the driveway every day. And I remember the quote was that my parents always remind me of is, I've got my own business. I'm starting my own business. And, so, I think it started early on, this sort of dream of just being able to kind of I don't know where it came from at that age. But just being able to sort of call the shots, or not even that, but just like have my own, guide my own life and where I wanted to be. But then in college, I was an environmental studies major and didn't really know what I wanted to do other than I like to hike and camp. And so I was like, oh, environmental studies, that sounds cool. And then my senior year in college, I mean, this was, when was that? Late 90s. So, not everyone had computers. They weren't as everywhere as they are now. And a roommate of mine in college had a computer, and I started messing around with design and websites. And I knew really quickly, I was like, this is it. For a while, I thought it was design. And then I got into, it was Flash at the time, and I wanted to make my websites more animated and do cool things. And I knew it was going to be software, and I didn't know it was going to be SaaS at the time, but I knew I was getting closer. And in 2000, right when I graduated college, it was the end of the .com boom, and I got lucky and I got a job at Adobe, and so I moved to San Jose. And from right then, I was like, that was I think SaaS existed, but it wasn't like a popular thing. And I was spending a lot of time. I started making at some point iPhone apps, but I was just like tinkering with all these ideas. And so I just knew, I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew I wasn't going to, I just never stopped. I never stopped, and I failed so many times, and I just kept going. So,
Yeah, I think there's some common undertones here. So failures. So how, even so, back in your early days, then your first kind of set of failures, how did that affect you? What did it do to your kind of psyche and your energy levels?
I have this, I've been thinking about, actually, I wrote something about this the other day, that we call them failures. And, I think we all know what we talk about when we say the word failure, but I keep like, I don't want to call them that anymore, because they're experiments or they're attempts. And it might sound meaningless to change the definition or the term there, but I think it's meaningful, because I feel like when we call it a failure, or it can become sort of like defeating, or like I failed, I suck. Like, no, or it's an attempt, and it's an experiment. And I just like I ran my first marathon a couple of years ago, and I just wanted to finish it. But I was like, oh, maybe at some point I'll try to qualify for Boston, or I'll do something else. Any attempts to try to reach that goal is not a failure. It's an attempt. I'm trying to get there. Maybe I'll get it on the first try, but I probably won't. So I don't know. To me, I never really viewed them as failures. It was like, I'm not there yet. What is my thing that's going to make it? And so I don't know. How did they affect me? I mean, they just drove me to keep trying, I guess, to be honest. And I don't know. Sometimes I say that and it sounds weird, because I don't want to be like, I don't know. I feel somewhat fortunate to have this mindset, or this just sort of determination that I don't know where it came from. Uh, so it was just, how did it affect me? It just keep going. What is the thing? What is the thing? What is it about? Like, why did this thing that I'm trying not work? Or why do I not feel like finishing it? Or, uh, all these things. And so over time, you're like, okay, I'm no longer going to go after some like massive market I don't know anything about. Okay, I'm no longer going to try a marketplace, because I don't know how the hell to try to get that many people in here at once. I'm going to no longer try to sell something that's $3 a month, because I need so many people. All these things, and over time, you're like, okay, now I've got my criteria. Now I'm gonna. So it's a learning process, and it's.
Yeah, I love this whole the whole thing of failures is a really kind of detrimental term, I think, for one of those learning cycles, because that's what it is. We have these learning cycles, and sometimes they go well, sometimes they really don't go well, but they kind of they narrow the path. And I think that's kind of interesting. But you need the energy to dust yourself off, kind of get back on the path and go, right, I'm not going to fall over that ravine, or do a backflip over there, because that's kind of crazy. But I'm going to derail myself completely now. You were mentioning about the small priced products, and the sheer volume of people you need to buy those things to be successful. So I find that interesting. And you've probably seen recently as well, Stripe are now passing the fees back down. So even if you have like a chargeback and you win the case, they're still going to give you the $15 bill for that, basically. So I think that's probably going to change the industry in terms of these, build something tiny to find your feet, because you could build something for $2, get charged $15, and immediately you've made a loss on your first sale when somebody says this is crap and I don't want it. So that's going to be, I think it's going to change the builder community. But so just to then go back, so you started off, I think, I love this, the common thread, and you probably would believe this, but so many people I talk to, they've all got that thing. They were off mowing lawns as a kid. They were washing cars. They were doing something, anything to try and earn a few bucks. But then you moved into, can we call it commercial software? You went to Adobe. So did you spend time then as a software developer, in product management? I mean, where have you spent the bulk of your career?
Well, when I was at Adobe, I spent 11 years at Adobe, and like I said, it was the end of the .com, and my degree was environmental studies. I had spent like a year on a computer, like literally. So I didn't have. I mean, I taught myself a lot in that time, but I didn't know a ton. And so I went in as a QA, testing, black box testing, which is like, you're clicking the buttons. And I quickly taught myself. I mean, like I said, it was time of Flash, and I was developing Flash sites with ActionScript, and then JavaScript, and SVG was a big thing at the time, sort of used differently than it is now. and then over time teaching myself to code, to write scripts, like automated scripts for work. So at Adobe, I would eventually writing tested scripts, testing script. And then outside, I would be building websites or like cool, like mixing boards on the web, or anything like that. So just over time, it was teaching myself to code, and by I had a very great, sweet position at Adobe as far as like quality of life, and I loved all the people there, and it's a great place to work and all these things. And so I stayed there probably longer than I should have, just in terms of wanting to transition into my own thing. But by the end, I had, like I said, I was building things all throughout that time. But now we were getting into like, late like 2008, 2009. We started to see like Patrick McKenzie come along, and Peldy of Balsamic, who actually had been at Adobe also and left and was crushing it. And I was just seeing it all early stages of people doing this, and I just I had to do it. So I just and 2011, I believe, is when I quit Adobe, and that was when I had just gotten married, and I knew we were gonna have kids soon. I was like, this is my time, so I've got to do this. And so
so you're right. So you hit on that. Then I was going to say, so when was like the kind of pivotal moment of like, I need to do something here? So you got married, you identified what the future's kind of beginning to look like.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like it was a lot like 2007, probably 2008. I remember like really being ready to go and try my own thing. But somewhere in there, whenever it was, like I had some stocks at Adobe and the stock market was tanking and all. I was like, I'm gonna wait till they go up and do those. And so I just like tried to wait things. I tried to time everything. And at some point I was just like, screw it. I can't time, like you can't time any of this stuff. There's never gonna be a perfect time. And so that's when I was like, you know what? This is my life, and this is what's meaningful. I'll figure it out. And if I have to go get another job, I will. So
I love that. Yeah, that's it. It's a realization happened. So and then, so you go, I want to do something for myself. This is my time. I'm going to do something. And then the question of the what. And I think this is the bit that I kind of fell in love with. I read the story. I'm like, damn, this is something. So where you are now, when did this bit of your journey begin? So, you kind of come to this kind of climatic, I guess, point where you look back, you've had some success, some real success. When do you think that beginning of the journey started? Where was that first seed for where you are now? Like the idea, the initial drive to start hunting? Because I think there's a moment that comes where you go, I need to do something. And then there's another moment where you get an idea of the direction you're going to go in.
Are you referring more specifically to the product that I've had success with, or just because I mean the whole
thing that
journey
leads to the product, and it's hard to identify. So we could start with the product and we could backstep. But I'm wondering if you had a gut feel before any of that happened, whether you actually did a full circle and validated something earlier that you had, or whether it just came out of the blue from sheer, shake the tree and see what falls out.
So yeah, so I'm gonna kind of answer that by way of kind of going back to where I just finished off the story, which is at 2011, I was I spent about 2 years or close to it on my own with no other work on an app that was an appointment scheduling software. I knew nothing about this. So yeah, I did all that. And then I was about to have my first kid, so I had to get a job. And I was like, well, okay, so that didn't work. So I want to surround myself with more people that are doing what I want to do. And so I decided to go immerse myself in the startup scene in Portland, Oregon, where we were living. And so I did that. And, I learned all these things and watched all these people doing things, and really like no offense to all the people that I like, there's some brilliant people, but what I realized is like, there's brilliant people that aren't making it. There are people that I don't think are that bright that are crushing it. It's just like, you just got to keep going. You just got to, there's nothing, it doesn't take something I don't have. I've got everything it takes to do it. So I just kept going. And I kept trying to match my sort of hobbies and things with something. And finally I was just like, you know what? I am into like cycling and music and playing in bands. And I for whatever reason, I just couldn't match something up. And so I just thought, I'm going to kind of go where the money is in a sense. And I started reaching out to, I don't think it was intentional early on that I was reaching out to sales teams. I think initially it was more just who in my network is like, has sort of like a higher up position or runs an agency or runs a business. I want to talk to them. I want to know their processes. And so I started doing that. And I very quickly honed in on sales teams because I realized that they have no problem spending money to make money. They will pull out a check for tools, no problem, if they think it's going to make them a buck on it. So I mean that's where everything was different for me in this one. So where I'm getting now is like the seed to what turned into a 58K a month app, which was, and I think the biggest difference was that I think you can do this by scratching your own itch, but for me, it was just like talking to a lot of people and finding out these pain points and finding the current themes and and there's a lot still there that I could probably go back and still do. But I mean, yeah, that was the difference, is just really figuring out how to ask people these certain questions, the right questions to get answers, and really realizing that people don't know. Like, you would expect that you could just go to someone and be like, hey man, what are your problems? What can I do for your business to streamline it? They're like, man, things are like as good as it can be. Like, well, they won't say that everything in their day is great, but they'll just say it's as streamlined as possible, or they don't know. It's really interesting that they don't. So you have to learn how to ask the right questions and also sort of filter what they say and sort of translate what they're saying into like reality. None of it's intentional, that they just. That's where the real seed started, and there were a lot of little. I was experimenting with Chrome extensions about lead generation from these conversations and trying like little things, and but that was the seed that kind of led to it. And there were a lot of little variations. I don't even really remember them all, but there were. I believe I want to say I started these conversations in May of whatever that was. I think 2018 May, maybe before that, but then it was August. I'm forgetting the exact dates, but I think somewhere in August that I kind of got like the idea, and then put 4 weeks of development on that, and then was able to charge. But
4 weeks of development.
4 weeks, yes, and things changed dramatically after that. But as far as like, I had to rebuild things, and I built it in a very scrappy way. But it was enough for people to be like, yeah, this takes hours of my day away.
This is awesome. I love that. So I want to wind back a little bit. So those early day conversations, how did you stop yourself from landing and settling on the first idea that you had? So how much validation did you do, and how much repetition did you do with the same theme to kind of really solidify the idea? Because I know a lot of people like me, I do this. I'm annoyed with something, I'm going to go and solve that thing, and then 10 minutes later, I'm looking at buying a domain and go, oh, this is a terrible idea. But it takes a bit of mental control, I think, to do what you did, to have those conversations, to not just go, that's it, bullseye, but actually to go, well, maybe it's a bullseye, but maybe I can find the same bullseye again, and really kind of solidify that idea.
I think a couple things were happening. I think because I have the same thing. I have shiny object syndrome. I always want to start something new, and it's hard to kind of commit to any one thing until you start to get momentum on it. But I think I did. I think what I was getting better at this point was like going and building just enough to kind of say, oh, is this what you meant? Does this solve the problem? Would this do it? And I'm talking like a day or two or less. I don't even, and then going back. So it was a lot of going and having 5 conversations, assuming I would find a common thread. I would come home, kind of think about it, see what I could do, experiment with some APIs or whatever it was. Like I don't know how to do that, or I can't figure out how to do that, or I don't think that's doable, or yeah, here's something, what about this? And I'd go back and I'd maybe see if the same people would meet me again to like say, hey, what about this? Is this kind of what you're thinking? And some new people. And I would just keep doing that until I found the common thread. And, there was something that someone had said that they wanted, and then I built a version of it, again, within a day or two, and I took it back, and it got all really awkward. And they were like, "Oh, well, I don't actually want to use it, but I want to go in on this with you." And it's like, well, I mean, we can have that conversation maybe, but like, I thought this was something you were interested in. Turns out they just thought it was a cool idea. People don't pay for cool ideas. People pay for valuable ideas or time-saving ideas or whatever else. So, yeah, I mean, so I guess to get back to your question, I think what I was doing right, which I still don't always do right, but like what I did better there was just forcing myself to be quick and not get too invested in anything, keep running it by people until I got what it's a gut. Like, you also have to go with your gut, right? It's like, I mean, there's different ways. You can charge a card, say, "Hey, can I swipe your card now? I will have this to you." You can do that. But I just wanted like a real gut feeling of, I think what they're saying is true. How much do I believe what they're saying is true? Am I willing to go invest this much time in it? And so I got to the point where I trusted this idea enough, and I had enough validation on it. So I did. And I think the other thing that was happening at this time was, I've been thinking a lot about this lately, actually, which is sort of a mindset hack. Because I feel like I have this strong internal drive to kind of just keep going. And then I'm like, well, what is it? Like, what causes that? Or can someone hack that? Can someone? And I've been thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Like a common thread of this sort of mindset hack is this, which is something I do, which is like create a sense of scarcity. And I do that with money. I've always taken everything I have that I don't need, and I shove it somewhere where I can get to it, like in index funds or something. Like, I'll put it somewhere where I can get to it if I need to, but it's not as easy as just transferring it to my checking account. Like, it's going to take, I'm going to have to really think about it. I'm going to have to go and like figure out which ones to sell. I'm going to have to train all this stuff. It's enough steps to make it a little harder. So then when I look at my bank account and I see I have $4,000 in there, like, I got to figure something out, and I know that I have something somewhere else, but in the same happens with time. So if I might have, like, I've got a family and kids and all this stuff now, so I don't have endless time. But even still, to like even make my time feel more scarce, it's like, I might have 5 hours in the day, but what if I act like I have one? And what are the things that I can do today that are going to like really move the needle? Like, I don't have time for a bunch of bullshit. Like, I gotta move the needle in an hour. And so at that time, I was, doing some like consulting stuff and freelancing, and to continue to get, I had some clients, but it was a lot. I could either put a bunch of time in trying to get more clients, or I could put time in trying to get this app to go. And I wanted to get the app to go. And so as I was kind of losing clients or not having as many clients, it put a fire under my ass to like, I don't have much time. Like, I gotta go. So that really helped me at the time, just stay focused. And, I try to recreate that now, but it's hard. But I think it's super valuable if you can create this sense of scarcity again with both money and time, because it really forces you to do what you need to be doing.
I love this. Absolutely love it. I mean, just a personal story from my past. There was a time in my life where I was nearly bankrupt. And at that time, I pushed harder, fought harder, and really went out of my way to just try and not even scavenge, just give me something, get me going. I'd learn harder, talk faster, work harder. That sense of, I've got to do something. And especially in the builder and indie community, I see people with full-time jobs. I'm the same, right? I've got a full-time job. I love building things and doing all this stuff. But the time you have left over, it's precious, and there's so much I want to do with it, which means I can extract more out of that spare time than I can. Like, I've got friends who are single, no kids, they go play golf 3 times a week, and they do nothing with their lives. I love them to bits, but they do absolutely nothing. But I think it's Parkinson's law. You give somebody like yourself a little bit of time, and they'll do more with that time, from a sense of scarcity and things are running out, than somebody who's got 10 times as much. They won't do anything. Where I think the old statement as well: you want something doing, give it to a busy person. They'll do it. But that's absolutely fascinating. What gave you the confidence, by the way, and this is a loaded question, to go off and talk to sales teams? because a lot of people, a lot of developers, people who've been in the QA space, people who've written code, engineering, developers, whatever, there is this kind of like love-hate relationship with sales and marketing. People, like, you've seen all the tweets, it's marketing week, and people go, oh no, they have to go dig in and do something they don't want to do. But I hated that so much. I put myself in a sales role to learn, to try and get over that fear and and once you realize the beating heart of an organization is where the money comes from, and all the bits that make maybe somebody views the world more logically makes them cringe, but there is an art, like this full well, to find somebody that will give you a card to swipe. So what gave you the confidence to go off and speak to those salespeople? Was it, again, that sense of there's something here and I just need to find it out? Because a lot of people won't do that.
I think it was just knowing that I had tried a whole bunch of things of trying to scratch my own itch and finding problems on my own, and I'd spent many years trying to do it, and not, I had varying levels, like a few $100 here and there, but I didn't have anything that, I just knew it was the next step. So I don't know. I think I started with people that I knew, a few of them. And then it kind of went from there, maybe introductions, and those things are all just like make it a little more comfortable than just reaching out to some stranger cold. But if you start with some friends, even if they're not the perfect role, persona or whatever, it's okay. And then introductions from them and say, oh, now we have this person in common. That makes it a little bit easier. But also, I think I very quickly realized that people are friendly. People are nice. They're not going to bite. And the jerks, people will say no when you reach out to them. If they don't want to do it, they'll say no. And if they say yes, they're going to be nice. And the reality is most people love to talk about themselves. And I ran a podcast for a while and quickly realized the same thing. People love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about their own problems. And this goes with customers too. People are hesitant to talk about their customer. I don't want to bother my customer, be too open with them or talk. They love it. People love it, So, it was this kind of thing. I'm the same way now. Like I get on here and I love having this conversation with you. I love having calls with people, and I'm meeting people all the time on Twitter and various places. I always sort of dread leading up to it only in the sense of having something on my calendar. Like I just don't like having something like that's splitting up my day, so that's why I always try to do these things in the morning, because it doesn't really interrupt my day as much. But same thing. So as soon I would dread having them just because it's something on my calendar, but once I would get there, it would always be really fun, and I would learn a lot, and I learned so much in that time. So the same applied when I started, every time I do demo calls, or especially early on with that tool, I was just doing endless demo calls, and it's just so valuable that I just knew that it was worth it. So I don't know. I think getting the confidence really is only the first few times. But I will also say that I think, when we spend too much of our time in our comfort zone, at least this is what I tell myself, that I'm often not focusing on the right thing. And I think that applies throughout most of the journey of the bootstrapper, which is you just got to get out of your comfort. That's why so many developers just end up just coding all the time and not marketing, because it's their comfort zone. Well, you're going to have a hard time.
Oh God, there's so much I wish I could, just start spitballing about. But I'm trying to keep this thing fairly short and fairly punchy. But a couple of things like spring to mind. So just a tangential question: would you consider yourself more introverted or more extroverted, as a general character?
Very much introverted, and those calls in 2018, those in-person coffees, and then all the demo calls I did after that were to seek out an idea and to sell the tool that I was building, but also very much for like personal growth and just like great experience for like practice for me to just get better at communicating with strangers and people that I might not have a lot of stuff in common with. And so that's helped me a lot. Like I still am very much an introvert, but I'm much, I think I say this in the Indie Hackers interview, which is just, it made me a much better conversationalist, having done all that. So it's pretty cool when you can kind of grow in a business way as well as a personal way at the same time. And so
I love that.
Yeah,
that's great. Because I'm software less developer engineer, whatever title of the week's going around. But too long looking at an IDE, too long thinking about mechanical things. It's like when you're looking at your screen. I work with a screen in front of me, and then it's straight above my eye line, I've got a window. And the problem is, the older I get, the harder it is to refocus my eyes and look at the trees after I've been staring at the screen for 20 minutes. But the same mentally happens if I've been working, like right now I'm working on a finite state machine problem solver. And the problem is, and I go and apply the same brain logic and the pathways to conversations I have with my wife. You can't do that. It's like a recipe for disaster. So that whole trying to keep things in a box. I mean, so one of the things I kind of identify out of your conversations is it's okay to have disagreements with people as well. So if somebody says, well, this is the way I don't know, this is the way I run some tech stack. And you go, well, I don't like that. Well, that's the way you do it. If it works for you, great. But then when you go into sales and marketing and communication and trying to sell your vision, when you've got some emotional attachment to something, I think that's when things get really interesting. So, you can, like, how would you handle somebody disagreeing with, let's say now, an idea that you've got data, you backed it up. You've now got people kind of going, all right, well, let's swipe a card or two and see where we're going. And then you have more of these conversations. At what point did you get to where you go, my idea is good, but I'm going to have these conversations and either defend or not defend? I mean, you get to that point of the journey, I think, where you change how you interact, because maybe the hunger goes down, the thirst, I don't know what it is, but something like a confidence grows. Maybe I've described this terribly.
Is the question, at what point do you stop defending? Is it, or?
Yeah, I described this really badly, so I'm good at this.
No,
I'm terrible at taking an idea and terribilizing it. So you, in conversation with salespeople, with marketing people, with people responsible for bringing a book into a business, you go and discuss what they do. You have some ideas. You've now, let's say in your journey, you've got to a point where you've built something. You've got your app. And then they turn around and say, well, that's not how we do things and we're great. Being an introverted person, more aligned to being introverted, how do you then handle that? Do you kind of just go around it and go, well, good for you, that's nice? Or do you try and do the selling act on them?
No, I'm not especially as an introvert, but I think my whole approach always to, sale, if it's even called sales, I guess, is just kind of positioning things in a way of like, can I show you this? Is that feedback? What are your thoughts? But more and more, I realized that the better thing. And there's a book out, The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick, which I'm only partially into. I just kept seeing it recommended all over the place. But I realized, like, he's got it's all about this approach of asking questions. It's all about the customer. It's not about your product. No one cares about your product. It's about the customer and their problems. And I think that's another thing that I happened to do fairly well when I was going through this process. Definitely, I learned a lot in reading the book that I wish I'd had that book before. But I think that's the key. Like, or at least for me, I'm not like going to try to hard sell someone on anything. What I'm going to do if I hear someone pushing back is be like, okay, this isn't for you, or tell me about what your problems are. Try to get them to talk more about what issues they might have that maybe I could solve, or maybe sometimes there is just a disconnect in, like, oh, this thing that you're thinking about, this can actually help you do that. You're just not quite seeing it. But I'm not a hard sales type guy. I want to try to pull things out from them and learn more from them, and hopefully find something that they find valuable. But if not, I'm not gonna try to force it.
So this is cool. I think we've got a Friday morning. We've busted potentially an urban myth that I think to make a first sale, it's like a lot of people go, well, it's just, look at the draw, right place, right time. I don't genuinely believe that. I think you're never going to have a perfect market fit. You're going to have a fit for an opportunity that you've identified. I think one of your amazing skills is you've got this kind of grit around identifying a zone that's big enough to do something in, and then fortifying that kind of confidence. But you don't have to be a hardcore salesperson to go and make a book. You can find out what works. You can slide something in front of them. I love that. And I think that there's some really bad kind of misconceptions doing the rounds. It's great to hear you say this stuff. Really great. So I'm going to just flip the conversation a little bit now. And in your background, it's fascinating. I think you've got qualities that a lot of people that have done, they've done something, they've achieved a vision they set out to do. You've got those, you've kind of got that inbuilt grit. And I'm not sure you can give somebody that grit for what it's worth. I've done a lot of these style of conversations now, and I think you either have it or you don't. You can encourage it, but if it's not there, I don't think you can clean the dust off the top. I don't know. Fight me. Contentious Friday point, maybe.
No, so I was talking about these mindset hacks earlier, and that's where this came from, which is, I've been, when I talk about, people are like, how do I do this? What does it take? Do I keep going? Do I all these things? Like, if you have to ask, the answer is probably no. Because the reality is, like, I found myself saying the same thing. Like, you either have it or you don't. I don't know how. I'm still trying to figure out how true that is. And someone asked me, like, can you hack it? Can you hack? I was like, it takes this mindset that people either have or they don't. And they're like, well, can you hack it? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't had that. So that's when I look at that. I'm like, well, I just did this last week, and I'm writing it up, like, mindset hacks. I'm just trying to think of, like, how can you hack your mindset? And I came up with these things, which I gave, I was mentioning these scarcity examples, and those are ones that I found that I use and I have. It wasn't really intentional. I mean, maybe early on it was, and now it's just habit. I'm not sure, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. But I think those kind of things can help. I think you have to want it. You have to want it a lot. But I also think there's this spectrum of there is a lot of luck. I think there are a lot of variables that we have no control over. And we have to remember that. Just because I have a friend who sold a business for like 15 or 20 million bucks. And I talked to him like a couple years afterwards, and he's like, man, the thing is, like, I did it once. I don't know if I can do it again. Like, I'm trying, but I don't know. And so just because I did it once doesn't mean I can do it again. I'm trying, but it seems with all these people. So there are a lot of variables that we don't have control over. And so I think, so I was gonna say that there's a spectrum of, like, some people will hit on something early on, like really, like their first thing. It happens. Not most people, but some people do. Some people it took me like a decade. And so if you get lucky, it's not all luck, but if you get lucky and get your first hit, you don't need as much of that grit. You don't need as much of that stamina and, like, determination to keep going. If you're 10 years in, you need it, and obviously you have it if you're still 10 years in. So
turn up the grit. I like that. Yeah. So 10 years in, you've got a scarcity things. I love this. Amazing.
Well,
right.
I mean, like if someone says, like, should I quit my job and go all in or something, like, or what does it take? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it takes grit, but the amount of grit you need depends on how long it takes you to hit on something, right? So, yeah. And I also think, I mean, other sort of hack, I don't know if this is a hack, but just like the more momentum with anything this is why now I'm just like, start trying to earn a buck. Don't try to come up with some big idea like how you're going to quit your job and make $20K a month or whatever. Start with earning a buck. Part of that is to learn something as you go. You will learn so much just trying to earn that first buck, but also just to get some momentum. It's just the snowball thing. Like, you just need that momentum. The thing that's going to get you up and keep doing it the next day is having a little bit of momentum, a little bit more momentum. Because if I've spent 2 years on this thing and I don't have any momentum other than like a bunch of code I've written, no, it's not.
So you land me straight onto the next question.
Let's do it.
That moment when your first book landed, describe in your, like, one sentence, how did that feel? When that first set of money came in, the first internet cash landed. Well, how did that feel? That's a moment right there.
Yeah. I'm struggling with. I mean, the first internet, like, I made $500 off an iPhone app or something like that.
Okay, let me be more specific. With this last thing that you've done.
Yeah, I will. There were two sort of milestones to me that felt. Actually, you know what? The biggest milestone, sort of, or like the biggest payment that had the biggest impact to me was actually not one related. It wasn't from the SaaS itself. It was from leads I sold right up before that, which was like $4,400 or $4,500 in leads. And this was a script I wrote from someone I had talked to. I was getting closer to the SaaS idea, but I wasn't quite there yet. And it was all around kind of lead generation. And this company said they wanted leads around with these very particular criteria. And I very quickly sold them, I think it was like, I don't know, 10,000 leads or something for $4,500. And it was so easy. I mean, writing the scripts was kind of tricky. It took me a few days, but a few days.
When you say scripts, by the way, text scripts or like vocabulary scripts that you talk to on the phone with?
No, it was code. So I went and talked to them, and they were like, we want, I don't remember exactly, but people that use Google hosted mail, that have Shopify or whatever it was. And so I wrote like Ruby code that would hit certain APIs to find these people, and then find email addresses in different ways. And so it was just this conglomeration of all these and I just remember thinking, like, first of all, that was really easy to sell. So salespeople are pretty cool in that sense. And then I got some scripts set up, and I hit run, and I went on a bike ride for like 4 hours, and I was with someone, and I was like, hey, you know what's cool? I just sold $4,500 worth of leads, and they're being generated right now, and I'm on my bike. Like I'm not. So I just went, that's cool. And so then, a month or two later, when I got my first SaaS payments, it's hard to say. I mean, it's very meaningful. It's very exciting, at the time. I think now it's kind of it's dampened because of all.
You kind of like meh money.
But you don't know. Like you're like, okay, that's awesome, cool. But am I going to get more? There's a fear. It's a fear of how long will this last? But I think, it's incredibly exciting, and that's the momentum. And then you get another one the next day, and another one the next day, and then before you know it, you look at it, you're like, ooh, 5K, that's pretty cool. Okay. And so then it starts to get pretty exciting when it starts to like change your life enough to be like, oh, now I don't really need more freelancing clients and these things. So yeah, I mean, they're all amazing. All those payments are very crucial from a mindset perspective.
Can I ask a very personal question?
Yeah, sure.
You can tell me, you can say, no, Dave, and we can edit this out, by the way. But at any point, did things get bad to the point where your family was affected negatively by what you were doing? So whether it was you pushed the money to front too much, whether it was time, were there any low moments from the personal side pushing you a certain way?
I don't. Not at the moment. So in other words, like at the moment, I don't know how much I realized it. I mean, I look back now, and with like, I've got two boys, they're 9 and 11, and I definitely have noticed a pattern of like, when I am stressed out, I'm not as good of a parent. I'm a more impatient parent. My wife has always been very supportive. I mean, there's like little pressures here and there, but nothing that made, she's been great in that sense. So it's tough. Yeah. I mean, it affected me, not in any like terrible depression ways, really. I mean, towards the end of the sale, when things were or not the end of the sale, but like before I decided to sell, things were so there's a lot of pressure when you have that many customers and it's a sensitive product and things like that. But I've always been try to be a very present parent, and I'm very involved with my kids. And so, with that, I put a lot of pressure on myself to be a good parent. And I'm also trying to, I have these career goals and these things. And so I have a lot of drive, and it's really, anyone that's been a parent it's really hard to balance those. I feel like I've done a pretty good job with it, but I look back and I'm kind of like, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's those times of like high pressure and high stress that I put on myself with my work definitely takes away from the level of my parenting. So,
but you could make the argument, and the counterpoint to that is through periods of high pressure and high stress, if you can recognize that, and this is something I try and do. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got nowhere near the stress levels that you had previously, but I try and double down and make a moment happen, or be there and be doubly present, instead of just average your way along kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
I mean,
know this is a lot.
The other thing that makes it extra tough, which is it's like a great positive and a big negative, which is just working at home. I've had offices outside of the house here and there, but generally I work at home. And especially in these days of like pandemic and all this stuff, it's like my kids don't really realize the separation of work and family time and home time. And to me, I love my work. It's all like this whole like work-life balance. To me, it's like, well, it's kind of all the same. I mean, to a point, and I just love it. Like, I'm always thinking about it. I'm here. I can. So, but they don't know the difference of like, hey, many parents are gone. Both parents are gone like 10 hours a day. You're off at some childcare that you don't want to be at, or some camp that you don't want to be at, or something. And I work like a few hours a day or whatever it is. Or sometimes I have some emergency comes up and I have to miss dinner, and it sucks and I hate it. But that's the price I pay for being able to be in Porto on Friday. I don't even know what date it is. Friday. Like these things that, there's a price we pay for this flexibility and this.
It sounds like though you're in positive credit. You're not in debt, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So just in the name of time, I know I try and keep these things short. I've had complaints in the past. Some of them have been like an hour and a half, and people are like, there's too much stuff. So I'm going to try and keep this under an hour. So, I mean, there's always a part two, and it sounds like you're up to all this stuff as well. So by all means, maybe we can have a part two at some point. In the tech space, I just need to kind of, I guess, cover the boring bit off, really. A lot of people focus on us and I generally don't believe it's not that important. But in terms of the tech stuff, your go-to set of technologies that get you off the ground, that get you running, what are the kind of top, the top five that you'd look at? It's a new project. What are you going to do?
It's so funny because I'm a tech guy, but I'm so not a tech guy. Like I don't care. I code in Ruby on Rails because that's what I learned in 2008 or 10. I don't know. It's just what I'm comfortable with. I was on AWS with all my stuff before. I recently was like, man, I'm spending so much time with this DevOps stuff and I hate it and I suck at it. And I switched to render.com recently, and it's just been like, it's not perfect, but it's so, for me, for my needs, it just saves me so much time. So I'm Rails. Like my website is in Jekyll, like it's just static, I'm a like minimalist with like everything, and includes code and websites. And I've done, what do I have something in Express. Like I like to experiment with other things, like definitely know some JavaScript and
Express. Sorry? I've not heard that in a long time.
Really? It might be outdated. See, I don't know. I just look at it, I'm like, oh, this is super lightweight, minimal. That looks cool. I'm going to mess with that. And so I experiment with other things, but really when it comes down to it, I go back to Ruby because it's what I know. And for me, my whole thing is about going fast and scrappy and being able to do things. And when I end up like getting all, I don't know, maybe things have changed, but like getting all caught up in promises and not understanding promises or callbacks and all this crap. And then like not having all the libraries until I find it's like, you know what, Rails has all the shit I need. So
I think you get to a point where you know what works, don't you? And then you go, you know what, I don't care about being trendy.
No one cares. No one knows, and no one cares. And if you get to the point of needing to change it, whatever. It's going to be a long time before. I guess probably the biggest concern would be at some point you get to this point you need to hire a team and aren't many Rails developers or something. But we're not there. We're not there yet. It's going to be.
I'll let you into a secret here. Every person that I've spoke to on Built uses Ruby. I don't think there's one person that's built something out there that doesn't have something Ruby in it. I think you're in good, a good community.
I'm not too worried about it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, this is cool. So we're coming up on the hour. So Mac, first of all, thank you for replying to my random Twitter message. I guess you're going to get a lot of people trying to sell you stuff and go, hey, can we chat? This hasn't been that. Thank you for saying yes to this. This means more to me, and hopefully to anybody listening to this, then you'll probably realize. Thanks again. Right, before we call it time though, have you got any kind of departing messages? Do you want to pitch something you're working on, or where can people find you, and where can people know more about you?
Yeah, I've been trying to be a little more active on Twitter lately, so you can find me on Twitter at SaaSmakerMac. So of course it's SAAS, and Mac is just MAC. I have a newsletter, the SaaS Bootstrapper, which is in my Twitter profile. There's a link to it, or you can go to the SaaSBootstrapper.co. I'm trying to get the .com back. I used to have it, and someone took it.
Damn it. There's another recording there, Mac, by the way. This has happened a lot recently, domain theft, and people dropping it, renewing it, and then not giving it. Oh, yeah, that's a whole other podcast. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you there. But yeah.
No, I mean, it's my fault. I ran a podcast on it back in 2016, 2017. I just let it go, literally, because it was like $12 a month to keep it hosted. I'm like, I need that money. That's where I was over like that scarcity thing. Anyway, so you can find me at the SaaSBootstrapper.co. I've got the newsletter. I'm kind of just trying to help other people coming up behind me and share what I know and what I continue to learn. And Twitter, those are the best places. But my DMs are open on Twitter, so I hope people do hit me up, and I'm here to build relationships and help people. So hit me up.
Well, thank you for being you, and thank you for coming on this. This has been awesome. And
you,
enjoy Porto. Yeah, very envious. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Weekend,
I appreciate it.
Hopefully we'll chat soon.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Take care.